and welcome to the Women's Football Podcast in association with We Love Sport. I'm Ali Drew and this is another Euro Hangout special. We are here at the Footage in Manchester. Right, I'm joined by Man United's Aoife Mannion and Man City's Esme Morgan. Girls, just to start talking about yourselves before we talk about the action. Esme, you've been injured, you had quite a bad leg break last year. How is the recovery going?
Really well. I feel as if I'm sort of back to where I was before my injury, besides now having a metal pole through my leg. But I feel like I can do everything I always could, and there's just a few final little things to tick off before I can sort of get back to playing matches, which is obviously what I've missed the most.
Has the recovery been harder than you thought it was going to be, longer than you thought?
Definitely not as long as I thought, because sort of the surgeon made it clear to me quite early on I'd be out for the year, so I always kind of had that expectation, but there's definitely been a lot more ups and downs. And I know, having spoken to Aoife through her rehab, you know that it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride, yet when you sort of have setbacks or down days, it still really gets to you, because when you make so much progress and then have a day where you're just in such pain or everything seems a little harder, it does get you down, despite being able to look back and see how far you've come already.
Yeah, Aoife, she mentioned that you're obviously in your rehab journey as well. Whereabouts on that journey are you now?
So I'd say I'm about halfway through an ACL rehab at the moment. I'm actually going to be jogging for the first time in a couple of weeks' time. You heard it here first.
Exciting.
The physio will be annoyed at me for saying that, just in case I get a setback. But I'm just on the precipice of jogging back on the pitch, so I'm sort of listening to Esme's journey, and I can see that she's over the mountain, or right at the top of the mountain, and I'm thinking, in a few months' time, that's hopefully going to be me. So it's going really well so far, quite straightforward. That almost sounds foreboding, like what's going to happen next. But so far it's going really well, and I can't really ask for more from a rehab. So yeah.
Good to hear you're doing well. Back on the pitch, ASAP, that's what we want. Right, before we talk about the Battle of Britain that we have just seen, we're going to rewind 24 hours. So Group D yesterday, we had Italy taking on Iceland, 1-1 draw, and then France against Belgium, and France won 2-1. Those games, what did you make of them? Do you think they were good games?
Yeah, I think the quality of the France-Belgium game was probably slightly higher than the first game, but both very exciting to watch, like end to end. The Iceland game was so open in the last sort of half an hour, and they had a really good couple of opportunities where they probably should have stolen the win. But I thought Italy were really, really poor first half, but came out a lot better in the second half. So I think they were both sort of evenly matched games, and Belgium gave France a really good run for their money as well in the second game, and looked at times as if they could sort of cause a bit of an upset in that one.
I think that France have been quite operators in this tournament so far, and I think with the sort of rightful hype around England and probably some of the attention on teams like Spain as well, they've kind of went under the radar, and so they've already won their group, we know that. The rest of the teams are sort of there or thereabouts vying for a second place, but I think that France could definitely be one to watch in the quarterfinals and onwards.
Yeah, do you feel like they are being a bit overlooked? I mean, in the match yesterday, they obviously conceded a goal. It was a bit of a lack of concentration from them that there was a result of that. Do you think that they are strong enough to be a sort of contender, and that people just aren't really talking about them at the moment?
I think going forward they look so dangerous, but they look really vulnerable defensively, and with respect to the teams they've played, I don't think they've had the sort of tests that they would get coming up against an England or a Germany or a Spain with the level of attack they have. So I think it would be interesting to see France come up against one of those stronger nations, because I don't think they've had those sorts of tests to contend with defensively, and when Belgium did come forward at times, France looked really shaky. So I think for all their strength and fluidity and danger going forward, I think they might be left sort of wanting defensively, but that's just something that's not been really tested for them so far.
I think they're a really interesting team to talk about, because obviously Amandine Henry and Eugenie Le Sommer were left out of the team by the manager, and we're talking about someone who scored a goal in a Champions League final and also one of the top goal scorers for France. And so that was a massive call from the manager, and so I'm not sure what people have really made from that. I'm not sure what I make of it really. But what we do know is that they've won their group. And so in a few weeks' time, will we be saying that that was an incredibly sort of astute, hard-hitting decision to leave those players out? Or will we be saying that actually they could have done with that quality? Ez has obviously spoken about maybe it being more their defensive side that might need to be sort of worked on through the tournament. And so, those players are massive forward threats, so potentially not. But it's definitely a massive talking point, I think.
Who do you think, in terms of you saying they could be a real threat, France, in later on, who do you think is the biggest threats? Everyone's talking about England, but who do you think are the biggest threats to England?
I think Germany's the obvious one that sticks out. They've looked so ruthless, so well organised, and we talk about France's defensive frailties. I don't really see that from Germany. I mean that's something that you would always associate with them, their organisation, their discipline defensively, but this Germany team really embodies that. And I think going forward, they've looked clinical and ruthless, again, as you'd expect from a German team at their best. So I think they're likely to pose the biggest threat to England's chances.
I would agree with Ez, and of course the other main team in that particular group is Spain. Now, we know that Germany beat Spain 2-0, but what's interesting about Spain is that they're peppered with players that obviously play for Barcelona, and Barcelona has just captured the eyes of sort of the women's football community this year, particularly with their packed, Nou Camp, record attendance. And so I don't know if they've actually sort of not shot themselves in the foot, but there's been a lot of hype on Spain that Germany don't seem to have had. Germany, another team, seem to have gone under the radar. That's not been the case with Spain. I think they've had a lot of eyes on them. And so I don't know how those players are going to feel. Will they feel the pressure? I don't know. I guess time will only tell.
Yeah, I think to be fair, coming into the tournament, I was earmarking England and Spain as my favourites, and I think losing Putellas was a huge blow for them. But I have been a bit underwhelmed when I've been watching them. They obviously play lovely possession football and sort of pass teams to death. I mean, we've been on the receiving end of it ourselves when we played Barcelona, but I just don't think they've had that sort of killer clinical edge that we've seen from Germany and England in the past few games.
Do you feel like Germany especially hasn't been spoken about because they're not really a superstar standout team? They're ruthless, as you say, they get the job done, they deliver when they need to, but it's not a superstar performance.
Yeah, I think so, and I also think that there isn't loads of attention on their domestic league, and so when we, fans and supporters that don't necessarily follow international teams, your best bet is probably to sort of predict how a team will do based on the standard of their domestic league. So we know England, the WSL, we obviously know France because of Lyon, we also know Spain now because of Barcelona, and I just don't think that some of the German domestic teams have been spoken about as much. I'm sure Ez will speak later about Georgia Stanway now signing for Bayern Munich, so I know that they're going to sort of revitalise their team and probably be spoken about more on a European and international level. But yeah, for some reason they don't at this tournament so far, and it will only do them favours because they won't have as much pressure or stress. They don't seem to be spoken about as much.
Well, let's move on to tonight's games, so Group A. Obviously, we just saw the 5-0 win for the Lionesses. Correctly predicted by you. You said 5-0, didn't you? So well done. And the other game that was going on at the same time, simultaneous kickoffs, Austria v Norway. Austria won 1-0. So they have gone through. So let's talk about the fact that Norway hasn't. And at the start of the tournament, most people probably wouldn't have said that would happen.
Yeah, I think when you're sort of writing out your wall chart and predicting who you think's going to snake their way through the tournament, I doubt many people, if anyone, put Austria ahead of Norway because it's a huge shock. I think historically they've been such a strong women's footballing nation, and they've got such talent in their squad, particularly in attack. Arguably two of the best players in their positions in Graham Hansen and Hegerberg, but just again, it seems to be a bit of a theme, but just defensively so frail, and England just carved them open. But I think, it's a real surprise looking at, on paper, the squad that they have, the fact that they've not made it out of this group.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really disappointing from Norway. Obviously, at Man United we have Vilde Bo-Risa, we've got Maria Thorsdottir, and so there's quality players on that team, and that's without talking about Blackstad from City, Ada Hegerberg, players like that. And so I think Norway were actually ranked above England, right? Like 3 places above England in the FIFA ranking, I think. And so they're definitely not expected to be losing against Austria. That said, I think we were all surprised at Austria's performance against England at Old Trafford. When I went to Old Trafford that night, I believed that England were going to put in a really convincing win. And actually that wasn't the case. Austria were really good, and Ez has spoken about some teams coming across defensively quite fragile. That wasn't Austria. And actually they were quite nippy going forward as well. And so probably like two sides to this. Norway being really disappointing, and then Austria maybe being a bit of a dark horse. Who knows? They will now face the top seeded or the top qualifying team out of Group B, which will be either Germany or Spain, probably Germany. And so Germany. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, we've got to talk about the Lionesses. We don't know who they're going to face next because that is tomorrow. But an amazing performance tonight, 5-0 against Northern Ireland. We wanted to say that it was going to be a bigger defeat than it was to Norway, because essentially Norway we see as a stronger team than Northern Ireland. But they started off a bit hesitant. It was probably not the game we were expecting for at least half of the first half.
Yeah, I think England were a bit sluggish at first in the first 20 minutes, and Northern Ireland threatened, and to be fair to them, had some really good opportunities. Marriott had to make a really good save down low to sort of parry away, and then the delivery from the Northern Ireland player in behind, where the ball sort of just ran through beneath the winger's feet, was an unbelievable cross, and an opportunity that they'll probably rue not taking, because it was 0-0 at that point. But I think as soon as that moment of quality from Frank Kirby came along, from that moment it was never in doubt, because England then just had control, they had the momentum. I think their confidence just then started oozing out, and Northern Ireland were completely shaken by it. And I think from that moment on, there was no doubt about where the result was heading, really.
I think it was a game that hit differently to the Norway game. Like 5-0 is still quite a comprehensive score, but it didn't feel like it had the same wow factor as that game. Obviously, records were broken in terms of the goal scoring in that Norway game. But definitely in the first half, there was portions of the game where, Northern Ireland were looking quite threatening, particularly sort of in between our centre-backs and full-backs. They were playing some really nice balls through to Wade. She wasn't able to capitalise on that. And Holloway seemed like she was one of their players of the match with some of the kind of defending that she was doing, the sort of last-ditch tackles and last-ditch blocks. Ultimately, our quality shone through, but it wasn't the wow factor that we probably thought it was going to be after Norway. That said, can you ask for much more than a 5-0 win?
I know, we're actually saying 5-0, not that. It's all right, it's okay, but 5-0 is a great score. It's only because of that 8-0 record-breaking score that we're sort of complaining about a 5-0 clean sheet. They've had a clean sheet through the group stages.
Yeah.
They can't complain, and it's great performance. But it was just, we wanted something spectacular. They're playing in their home country. I think it's just the wow factor that we wanted, and because we've had such a high, it just wasn't going to quite match.
Yeah, I think, and as well coming into the group, you'd sort of expect the game against Northern Ireland to be the one where England did win comfortably. So I think any strong result that they did get was almost just, that was what we thought was going to happen, move on. But I think the fact that you brought up the 3 clean sheets is such an important point, because in tournaments like this, if you can defend astutely and keep the opposition out, you've already given yourself half a chance, because if you keep a clean sheet, at least every game in the knockouts now is going to penalties. And I know we'd probably rather avoid the anxiety around that, but if that's what it comes to, then you've given yourself half a chance. And I think defensively, when you've got that foundation and the players in front of you feel secure to sort of let the defenders do their job, trust that the midfielders are going to cut out opposition attacks, the forwards can sort of not cheat, but just be a little bit more sort of positive in their positional play and maybe not force themselves back as deeply when they're defending, and that gives them the freedom as soon as we win the ball back to just go on, run, get in behind, get on the back line of the opponent and go and score us a goal.
Don't forget you can find your nearest pub showing the Women's Euros at welovesports.co.
Yeah, I agree, and it probably says quite a lot about England as a team that we've not really spoken about their defenders. I think Millie Bright has had a few comments of real praise, but we probably haven't needed to speak about it. We've not conceded a goal. Well done, Mary Earps, our goalkeeper at Man United. And so, yeah, probably quite sort of informative that we're not actually spending that much airtime on them because we don't need to.
And the team going into tonight was the same as we'd seen, but then at half-time we saw a few changes, and that seemed to make the difference because a flurry of goals came straight after. They came on the pitch, started scoring goals. A few of your teammates were on.
Well, it was just so good to see Alessia Rosso score, first of all. I want to see more of Alessia Rosso and Ella Toon, their players at Man United, and that headed goal kind of, how often do you actually see women's football players scoring consistently with headers? It's like not that prevalent yet. And so she scored that goal, and then she did the total opposite. She did this really nice sort of individually worked finish where she rolled the player and then sort of slotted it. She's got everything. That is exactly what she does in training when it's five-a-side. And so for me, it's just, as a friend, it's amazing to see someone be able to bring something that they do week in, week out in training to the biggest stage for women's football.
Yeah, I echo that completely. I get on so well with both Alessia and Tooney, and I was really pleased to see them come on, and it made me so happy to see how joyful Alessia was when she scored that goal, and that turn was a thing of beauty. Like, I've seen her do it before, but to, as you say, do it on the biggest stage, European Championships, your first major senior tournament, like what more could you ask for, really? And I think Alessia is so dangerous because she does so many different things well. Physically, she's got so many great attributes. She's strong, she's fast, she's dynamic in her movement. But I think she's really intelligent. You see her, the reason she scores so many headers is because when she's in the box, she just gives defenders a little nudge to get a yard of space where she can back off and win the header, or she makes one movement and then darts in a different direction. I think she's really smart with her runs, and that's why she's found herself in these positions, and I'm so pleased to see her doing so well.
It certainly made a statement, having not been on the pitch, to come on and to do what she did.
Yeah, I think when you sort of come off the bench and you've not necessarily had as many minutes in the tournament as you would like, you're desperate to come on and make an impact, and I think for them to do exactly that is just so pleasing for them, and will give them such a boost.
Well, Leslie's knocking on the door, isn't she? She's knocking on the door and saying, you need to start me. And what more of a way to say that than to score 2 goals? We won't talk about that missed chance. Of all of the chances that she had, that was probably the easiest one to convert. She absolutely skied it. But when you've scored 2 goals for your country after having come on at half-time, we can give her a little bit of respite. But she must be giving Sarina Wiegman a headache. She must be.
Talking of Sarina Wiegman, obviously she wasn't there tonight. She has got COVID, so she's in isolation, I'm assuming, resting. We don't know whether she's ill with it or not. I guess hoping that she's going to be back for the game on Wednesday. But do you think that her not being there had an impact tonight on the players?
I don't think so, because I think she'll have been heavily involved in the preparation, both in the build-up to the tournament and in this game. Even if indirectly via her staff, they'll be passing on her messaging. And obviously, since COVID, we've got the beauty of Zoom and Teams and everything, so I'm sure she's tuning into the meetings somehow.
Yeah, do you think she was communicating throughout that match with everyone in their ear?
Absolutely, someone will have had a little buddy.
She'll have been in someone's ear, wouldn't she? I mean, I'd be, so... Well, firstly, I hope that she is well, right? We know that she's got COVID, but hopefully her symptoms are mild. And if they are mild, I'm sure that she's working from home, in whatever capacity that can mean as a football manager of the Lionesses, like probably one of the biggest jobs in the country. So we hope to see her back on the sidelines very soon. We don't know what her symptoms are like. it's not ideal for the team, but I think that, they will know their roles and responsibilities going into the match. The team were headed by the assistant manager, Ian Verning, so I think it would have been sort of full focus, blinkers on, get the game done, and I'm sure that Sarina can take a breath now.
So going forward now to the Lionesses, Wednesday, the quarterfinals. What are you wanting to see? What teams are you wanting the teams to start differently at the start of the match? Are you wanting the same? What are you expecting, and what are you wanting from this?
I think the main core of the team is going to remain the same. I think she's sort of set in saying that is my strongest 11 and I'm going to go with it. But as we discussed, a few players are knocking on the door and sort of staking a real claim for a starting place. You could argue Alessia is very much deserving of a starting spot after that performance. So I think there's going to be a few different things where she has to consider whether people are more deserving with the performances they've put in coming off the bench. But also, you've got to bear in mind how many matches people have played. It's draining, both physically and emotionally, playing so many games in such a short space of time. So I think they're going to have to bear in mind that players might be fatigued through the latter stages of the tournament and potentially utilise the depth of the squad a little bit more.
I think similarly to Ez, most of that team, the core of the team, are on lockdown. I don't think we're going to see much change in the starting 11, especially the right-hand side of the pitch. With Lauren Hemp being a left footer but playing on the right side, it kind of means that naturally she comes inside, and particularly in this game, that's meant that Lucy Bronze has been able to sort of turn on the engine, get the legs going that we know her for, to get up and down the pitch. So there are players coming off the bench doing great, but who would you substitute out? When we talk about Alessia Rosso, she's coming in as a number 9, but yet Ellen White, up until this game, was the joint third highest goal scorer in the whole tournament with 3 goals. That's 3 goals in 2 games before tonight. And so, it's a really tough one. It must be the best headache in the world. If there's such thing as a good headache, this is the type of headache that you want. So I think what we expect to see from England is more of the same.
Yeah, because we do have to talk about the strength in depth that they've got. I mean, some of the players she hasn't even got off the bench yet, and they're top players. That is a good, again, a headache, but it's a good position for them to be in, because as the tournament goes on, players who have played all the matches will be getting fatigued, but it's not a worry because there is such quality on the bench still.
No, exactly. You look through the squad depth, and these are people who play week in, week out for teams at the top of the WSL or teams abroad. And there's so much talent in this squad, and I think you can see that they know that as well. I think they've got such a belief, such a confidence in each other, and this sort of, it's not arrogance, but it's this innate confidence and belief that they know they arguably have the best squad in the tournament and they can go on and win it. And I think they're so ruthless and driven in knowing that, and I think that's so powerful that they've got that unity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the under previous England managers, the squad or the starting 11 seems to have changed a bit more. There seemed to be more rotation between matches, and so that's something that Sarina Wiegman is definitely doing differently with the England squad at the moment. A very predictable and consistent starting 11. In her media interviews, she's been talking about the quality of rhythm. She wants her teams to get into a rhythm. She wants them to be consistent, and in order to do that, she must value having players, working and playing with each other. Even though we say that players play week in, week out in the WSL, that's with their own teammates. It's not necessarily with their teammates in the national team. And so, it seems that she places a premium on the relationship and the dynamics between players on a team and growing that over games.
Now, obviously, we're talking about the players, but we do have to talk about the crowds that have been throughout this tournament. It is incredible to see. We've not seen anything like it before, and it is so good to see the stadiums packed out. Old Trafford for that first game was unbelievable, 68,000 people. How good is it for you two, especially, to see the fans and the support for this tournament?
I mean, I didn't go to the first game, but I went to the game at the Amex, and I got goosebumps hearing the cheers from the crowd as the teams walked out, it was just deafening. And I thought, this is what this stage deserves, is this level of support, this level of passion for the team. And it was just amazing. Every single time Lauren Hemp got the ball, the volume just went up a notch. I thought, God, she probably can't hear herself think. It's so loud in this ground. But I don't know if you can speak about Old Trafford, because I mean, that had a crowd 3 times as big as the one I went to.
Well, if you're getting goosebumps at the Amex, imagine what would have happened to you at Old Trafford. You know, I know you're a City fan.
Even bigger at the Etihad.
Yeah. So yeah, 68,000 at Old Trafford. Absolute incredible attendance. I said earlier that the attendances have already broken a record for the European Championships. We're already at something like 248,000. And that's with 15 more games to go. I think the average attendance across all the games is around 15,000. And that's really good for the women's game. And it was only, obviously, you know, we watch it on television and we can get an idea of what it's like. But when I was at Old Trafford, and particularly walking out of the stadium afterwards, sort of seeing groups of girls and groups of fans just absolutely sort of singing their heart out, it's just not something that we've really been exposed to before, to be honest. So it's a real sort of like pinch me moment, and long may it continue and grow.
Absolutely, hope it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Before we finish, I want to get a sort of prediction of the tournament from you both. So, do you think it's coming home? And also the predictions of the upcoming games, who you think England's going to face next, and what you think is going to happen in the tournament.
We've got to say it's coming home. I mean, not just because we'll fall out with all of our friends if we don't, but I genuinely believe it. I think there's so much talent in the squad, and as I said before, the confidence and belief that you can just see pouring out of the team, I think can really take them all the way.
Definitely. I mean, one of the great things of being a fan and a supporter is that we can just let ourselves get totally absorbed in the emotions. When we play, you know, we have to really cut the atmosphere out and sort of really focus on what we're doing. But as a fan, who cares? I think it's coming home, and it doesn't really matter if if it doesn't. For me, we can just really let ourselves go. So that's what I want to see. I think that England will face Spain in the quarterfinals. That would be my prediction. And I think that England will beat Spain for the reasons that Ez touched on earlier. In some ways having really bright sparks, but maybe defensively not looking as good. Although that will be a real test. I think Norway have been sort of doing their own thing this tournament, where they've really been below expectations, but Spain or Germany will be England's first test, and we're not going to be talking about 8-0 or 5-0. Well, we want to, but we probably won't. So that will be such an exciting matchup, whoever they end up playing against.
Because they do just look like they're enjoying it. They just look like they're having a ball. They have smiles on their faces throughout the match, and that's got to be a positive sign, the fact that they're just, even though they're going to come across harder opposition, more tests, but they're just enjoying the football.
Yeah, they look as though they've just been given the licence to try absolutely anything creatively going forward that they want. You see them dummying it and leaving it running for other players to take control, or flicks and back heels and stuff. They've just been given the freedom to enjoy themselves playing football, and it's like watching them on the school playground. And it's so engaging as a fan on the outside to watch, because it's just great to see them enjoying playing on the biggest stage and living out their dreams in that sense. And I think, although yes, the challenges are going to get tougher along the way, I hope they don't lose that, and I hope they still feel the same confidence and freedom to express themselves and play with the freedom that has got them to this point.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. Don't really have anything to add to that. But they look like they're really expressing themselves. They look like they're smiling, although it's easy to smile when you're scoring so much. So much a portion of the game is their goal celebrations. And so I hope that they bring this vein of form into the quarterfinal and onwards. And I hope that they kind of continue to play in the sort of light manner that they're coming across. We know, though, that actually inside they will feel ruthless. Like there'll be a difference between what it looks like to us, which is very smiley and happy and expressive, and actually on the inside for them it will be like proper business, silent assassin, I need to do my job. And I don't even know if they'll be coming up for air, to be honest. Maybe now when they've got a rest in between games, but they're on it. They're definitely on it.
Are you going to any more games throughout the tournament?
I hope so. The quarter-final might be a bit hard to get down to in Brighton, but I think the semi's in Sheffield, so I shall definitely be making the trip across the Pennines for that one.
Yeah, me too. I'll definitely be at some of them.
Perfect. Well, enjoy the rest of the tournament and thanks for joining us. Thank you. Well, that's all for tonight. Many thanks to our special guests, Aoife and Esme, for joining us, and everyone here at The Footage in Manchester. Don't forget to subscribe to the Women's Football Podcast, and if you want to find out a pub near you that is showing the match, go to welovesport.co. See you next time.